Folks, welcome to an all new So Bad It's Good. This is your pal Ryan, and this is your Friday episode. You have made it to the end of the week. My goodness, that Memorial Day weekend, when you get that day off, it really messes with you. I thought yesterday was Wednesday, and I thought yesterday was Tuesday. Anyways, I was confused all week, and I actively talked about having that day off, and I am still turned around on my days. Anyways, we are doing a Summer House Reunion Part 1 recap. Once again, I always feel like I'm in the minority with Summer House. I enjoyed this reunion. I enjoyed it. I think there are a couple of things that obviously we need to talk about. And I find it very interesting, the conversation I'm seeing between Lexi and what is being labeled by some people Mean Girls, the Amanda, Ciara, and Paige clique. And once again, I find it so interesting that that is the majority of discourse we are seeing when we should be shining the spotlight on Jesse Solomon. It's almost like we don't like women sometimes. It's either you hate Lexi or you hate these quote unquote mean girls. When I'm like, right there, it's right there, you guys. This is a softball lined up. We need a direct questioning of Jesse Solomon. I mean, to me, that is the very interesting thing of this kind of blasé attitude towards Jesse's own behavior. And you almost get like the, Amanda, Paige, Ciara clique almost laughing off what he's done, where you see that it actually truly has affected Lexi. Now, when I talk about anybody on this show, nobody is above reproach. It's not like Lexi is perfect by all means. No. Also, if you're in your 20s and you're perfect, you have not lived life correctly. Everybody is suspect, especially if they're on reality TV. But I do find it frustrating when I see some of the discourse and I'm like, guys, I just feel like we're skating over Jesse, or Jesse has turned into a meme rather than a discussion. And from what I hear from female friends and listeners is the kind of guy and the kind of behavior that Jesse exhibits, or maybe even West last season with Ciara, are things that they actively deal with on a daily basis. I mean, we had Rebecca Jennings, the author of that Love Island book, on Tuesday, and she has a whole book about dating in the modern age. And to me, I find that really fascinating, of a type like Jesse Solomon that is out there professing love, but at the same time is so over-sexualized that he is not ready for any sort of serious relationship. To me, that is a virus that seeps into culture in so many more ways. But what is so interesting is the byproduct of that is the way that we typically go. Instead of focusing really on the man, we go towards the women. And then I'm not saying Jesse is necessarily fully consciously pitting the women against each other, but then we do that. And I understand why, because it is easy to see the bedbugs laughing at the toe sucking and go, wow, that's a little distasteful, when Lexi is right there. I don't know. This is why I find reality TV really fascinating, also because of we always forget that friendships are there. Is that, yeah, Jesse came in guns blazing last season and really did form friendships. Whether those friendships are real, that's, who's to say? But they seem like they genuinely enjoy Jesse Solomon. Now, think about your own lives. I think about my own life. If I enjoy somebody, I am so much more willing to make excuses for them. And maybe that's a problem, right? But we see that. We talked about it just yesterday on the episode of The Valley, and how, Jason still pals around with Jax, other people pal around with Jax, even though we've seen 13 years of troubling behavior. But if you like somebody, and I don't know, I mean, that's like a weird moralistic question of, do you just dump them? Do you just go no contact? Or do you say, I believe you are redeemable in some way, or I know an aspect of you? In some way, is that altruistic to believe in somebody? And then we talk about that concept of forgiveness all the time. Now, I will say in this, the first part, Wes Wilson, they dive a little bit more into the Ciara relationship. And to me, even though you might not think it, passes the test, I thought Wes seemed to try to truly understand what he had caused Ciara. And isn't that what we're trying to do? Is that maybe he will have learned enough so when he gets into another situation like that, and he will, that he will think differently. He won't go to the New York Times. He'll go to the Inquirer. No, no, no. But like, I don't know. Like, I was like, are we so blood hungry for people to dislike? And it's not just disliking men, because we dislike women even more than men sometimes on these shows. The one example where I felt like we all came together for a little moment in time is Tom Sandoval with Scandoval. And even then, 2+ years later, everybody is slowly backing away from that. But I find it interesting, and go with me here, you guys. I know I ramble, but this is a show where I talk. I was watching, there was a couple things that I watched on TV this week that really moved me in really interesting ways. I talked about this on Monday's episode, but there's a 2-part docuseries or documentary on HBO Max called Pee-wee as Himself, about the life of Paul Reubens, the man who created the iconic character Pee-wee Herman. And there is this section, I think it starts in the second part of it, where I don't know if you were alive or what age you were when Paul Reubens got arrested in a porn theater in Florida. The adult films were being shown, and undercover sting operation was happening. And they said that he was potentially groping himself. And listen, I have never been to an adult movie theater. And I have nothing against adult movie theaters. There's a reason they exist. Adult movie theaters are not illegal, but there was a sting operation in there, and he got busted in this sting operation, right? And this really affected his career in this major way. He ended up having to pay a $50 fine, but it ruined, for all intents and purposes, his trajectory with the character Pee-wee Herman. And up to that point, he had really separated Pee-wee Herman and Paul Reubens. Paul Reubens, only his family and close friends knew. The public at large only knew Pee-wee Herman. He didn't do interviews as Paul Reubens. And in fact, that also kind of fucked with his head a little bit, because here he is. He wanted success. He wanted some aspect of fame, and he got it. But he got it under Pee-wee Herman. He didn't get it under Paul Reubens. Nobody really gave a shit who Paul Reubens was. You know, like Paul Reubens wrote Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but nobody was like, who's Paul Reubens? It was Pee-wee. And part of that was by design. He did that. That was a conscious choice that he might have later regretted. So then this happens, and, you know, not only the movie, but he was doing a children's show, Pee-wee's Playhouse, that was on Saturday mornings. He did 5 seasons of Pee-wee's Playhouse. And then, yeah, he had a personal life where, you know, he was a gay man that never, it wasn't that he was not out of the closet. He just chose a very conscious choice after a really powerful relationship in his early 20s to say, you know what, I don't want to do this again. I want to focus on my career, and loving somebody this much and living as a couple is going to take away from my goals of trying to pursue my dream. I thought that was such an interesting concept, but also the aspect of having a private life. And so he had to slowly rebuild his career as Paul Reubens. And a lot of people, I mean, I remember this. I remember seeing the mugshot of Pee-wee Herman, and he had a little goatee, and his hair was long, and it looked nothing like Pee-wee Herman. I remember being shocked. I wasn't disgusted at all, but I was just shocked. And then there's this really beautiful part at the end of the documentary, because he had that brush up, and he had another brush up with the law where somebody accused him of having child pornography at his house. And there was a huge team of police, I think SWAT, everything kind of descended on the house. He was filming an Elton John music video. He had started to establish his career again as an actor, as Paul Reubens, not Pee-wee. And Pee-wee, or Paul Reubens, was a collector. You know, I always talk about collecting things for my reality show museum. He collected everything. He had a whole huge storage facility with every piece of his career, and he would buy weird found objects at swap meets, and like he would go with, like, David Arquette is a talking head in this, and they were friends, and he'd be like, oh my God, you'd go to these places, and he had this huge collection. But he bought a lot of like 1950s erotica, male erotica. And it would just be like male pinups and muscle boys and all of this stuff. And some of this stuff they even talked about was not even touched. He just bought a collection and didn't go through it. It was just in storage. And it turned out to be a completely false flag operation where there was no pedophilia. He had to finally plea out because his dad was dying and he didn't want to go through a court trial. And once again, he just pled to one count of obscenity. And there was no pornography, there was no child pornography at all. But this really hurt him. You know, he was already inwards after the debacle at the adult movie theater, and then this happened. And in some ways, it crushed his spirit. And the last part of it was that the day before he died, and he knew he was dying, but he did keep it from, the documentary production. They were not aware. I only think close friends and family. He did not make that a part of his life at all. And he battled, I think, for 7 years with cancer. And you hear his voice. You don't see him, but you hear his voice, and you can tell it's a voice in pain because he's a day away from dying. And he just said, he was saying, I think it's important to make this documentary just to let people know how much it hurts to be falsely accused of something. And sometimes where there's smoke, there's not always fire. And I was so moved by this. And I just kept thinking of forgiveness. And I kept thinking of, especially when you're a career in the spotlight, is that your life is going to be raked over the coals. Your kind of sense of privacy goes out the window. And especially with reality TV, because that's the commodity, is your privacy. And it really just, it messed me up, but it also reminded me, God, we are all such imperfect creatures. Like, I know here we usually come to laugh or usually listen to make fun of me, but I do want to kind of make this point. And I hate it because it's so much easier to completely make fun of and bash people. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, man, we do some weird shit. The human mind, how we justify our actions and the actions we make and what we go, like, I don't know. Like, there are people that are 100% evil. There are people that are misguided. There are people that are just dumb. There are people that are a mix of all three. I don't think anybody escapes this life without making some gigantic mistakes that you really have to go back and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like, I remember logisticizing this, but that was so interesting to me. And then, it all for me goes into one big pop culture file in my brain of all these things that I watch. But that Pee Wee Herman documentary really moved me. But it also just, it's like I watch these shows and we get so angry. I get so angry watching them. And that's part of the reason why I like them. But at the end of the day, you're like, oh, dude, we're all just people. We're all just people. And some people need to be knocked off their pedestal. That's why, some people like Jesse Solomon, we need to kind of snuff this flame out, because there should be hope for Jesse Solomon. There should be hope for Lexi. Oh, my God. And what does reality show teach us? It doesn't teach us just to be angry. It can teach us to be analytical. It can teach us to kind of put a magnifying glass on our own lives. And at the end of the day, it's just fun. It can be fun. I mean, we can laugh at these people. We can laugh at the idiocy of these people. But I will say, upon closer inspection of our own lives, we are a part of that idiocy as well. It's just that we are not getting paid for it. And we have not signed up for this. So it is much easier to laugh along, to point fingers like I will be doing this entire next hour. So anyways, I just wanted to start with that. That was just kind of, I've kept thinking about that all week. How are you, by the way? We're only 14 minutes in. How are you doing? Are you good? Okay, good. Last night, if you listened to the Valley podcast, I switched antidepressants, and I will tell you, that was a really hard night for me last night. Like, I literally stared at a wall for like an hour and a half. Like, I mean, I was here at this podcasting thing, and what I do is I have this set up, and I just hit record and pause and record and pause. And so I'll do a scene, and then I'll pause, and I'll go rewatch the scene and take some notes, and I'll kind of go through. And then sometimes I was just so out of it that I would just pause and then just stare at the wall behind this computer that I'm recording from. And I had not felt like that in a while. And it just, I mean, these things are tricky, like they can really mess with you. And you have to realize that's sometimes part of it. But I was actually legitimately a little nervous last night. I was scared. I was like, oh, this feels gross. I do feel better today. But I am glad I brought that up because I was like, I don't know if I'm even making a lot of sense in this recap. So hopefully that was okay. Okay, folks, this is exciting. Let's talk about our friends at Naked Wines. Now, we are fast approaching summer, and there is nothing that screams summer like a beautiful array of wines. And sometimes you are too busy to go to the grocery store or the wine store to grab them. But with Naked Wines, you can get the most beautiful, pristine selection of wine. You just go to the website, put in all the different types of wine you like to drink, and then they select these kind of amazing wines. Also, what I find it good for is if you're invited to something, and I don't get invited out much, but when I do, you're supposed to bring something. And nothing says you are a great guest if you bring a bottle of wine. So it's always good to have wine on store. It makes you the most interesting person at the party, right? And also, have you ever wanted to learn more about wine, but you couldn't figure out where to start? Or when you do start, it kind of feels like too much. So our next partner, Naked Wines, has changed the game for learning about wine without having to take a whole class about it because boo learning. The podcast, this one, is sponsored by Naked Wines. It's 2025. Do you still shop for wine like it's 2025? Naked Wines is a service that directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers so you can get award-winning wine delivered straight to your door. And use our code SOBAD. Listen, this is so great. That should be the product code, but we're doing So Bad because that's the name of the show. So Bad for the code and the password at nakedwines.com. I truly want you to do this. Use code SOBAD for the code and the password, nakedwines.com, and you can get their incredible deal of 6 bottles for just $39.99. I had my last bottle of Naked Wines 2 weeks ago because unfortunately I'm on a cleanse right now. I'd like to be drinking all of the Naked Wines, and it was just an amazing experience. We had a beautiful dinner with it. It was the perfect start to a really nice weekend. So how do they do this amazing deal? Naked Wines connects winemakers and wine drinkers directly, allowing for your vineyard to your door delivery at up to 60% off what you would pay in store. Now, by cutting out the traditional retail middleman costs and markups, winemakers can pass those savings on to you without skimping on quality. I don't know. This is just a really cool service. And when I went to their website, it really does kind of map out everything. And it really does ask, do you like bold flavors? Do you like whites? Do you like reds? I mean, it really is an exciting process. And the best thing is you do not have to spend time in your car to go get this. And it is relatively inexpensive. Naked Wines has been around for 15 years, over 15 years, and funds over 90 independent winemakers around the world. With no commitments or membership fees, you can enjoy Naked Wines hassle-free. And don't forget, you can pause or cancel this at any time, so just because you've got a trip coming up doesn't mean you can't enjoy Naked Wines before or after that much needed vacation. So this is the big one. Pay attention. Now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Head to nakedwines.com/SoBad. Click enter voucher and put in my code, Ryan Bailey's code, SOBAD, for both the code and password for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. My God, shipping included? So that's $100 off your first 6 bottles of wine at nakedwines.com/SoBad and use the code and password SOBAD for 6 bottles of wine at $39.99. Whew, do this, folks. I'm telling you, this is a good deal. 2 other things that I wanted to talk about that I watched this week that were interesting. And it's those things where, like, I personally love them. It's sometimes a hard recommend because it really is dependent on taste. I always talk about Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal. Now, Nathan Fielder, a comedian known for Nathan For You on Comedy Central, and this is his 2nd season of The Rehearsal on HBO Max. They just ended their 2nd season this past Sunday. And I think he's just spectacular. He's like an Andy Kaufman for this generation. is, and he just so commits to the bit. Even, I don't know if it is a bit, if it isn't. And I love that question of what is he doing? But this whole season focused on aviation safety. And his whole thing of the rehearsal is you rehearse these real life scenarios so you can actually live out these real life scenarios. Everything is better with rehearsal. You know, like that's how you make things perfect. But this season was aviation safety. And the whole thing was he had this thesis that if pilots were communicating better with each other, we would have more safety in the air. And he is rehearsing, speaking in front of Congress. But then he always takes these weird like U-turns within the series. And there's only 6 episodes of the second season of this. And throughout, like towards the end, we find out that Nathan Fielder might be autistic. You know, and he goes and speaks to somebody at an autistic foundation, and she's giving a test of what she does to people to kind of trying to diagnose in a way, and realizes that he doesn't say it out loud, but the audience is meant to pick up on this fact that, oh, Nathan Fielder might be. And then the final episode, which is just mind-blowing to me, because you just don't see this coming out of anywhere, is that he flubs this meeting with the congressman, doesn't go well at all, after he found out, or he was questioning if he was autistic. And he said, you know what? I didn't rehearse this. I'm going in cold because I am fine and I am normal and I can do this without rehearsal. And he flubs that. And then the last episode picks up where we find out that Nathan has gotten a pilot's license, is that he has been working on this for 2 years. And not only a pilot, like they show him over a 2-year period getting his pilot's license. And he is so bad at it first. They say he was like the slowest learner that they've ever had. And then he learns how to fly 737s. He learns to fly these huge planes because he wants to show his thesis, and he's going to put himself in harm's way. And then on top of that, he's going to fly people in a 737 Boeing and then have like actual passengers. But the way he gets around the loophole is that they are paid actors. So he auditions everybody with lines like, oh, when the stewardess comes around, your line is Diet Pepsi. And so he pays them to get through these loopholes of the FAA, the aviation, of HBO. They go and rent a 737, and like he has to go to different countries to find that. It really is the weirdest, most grandest thing that I've seen on television. And it's slow as molasses, but you're just blown away because this dude really did get his pilot's license. Not just a like little like biplane, like a huge, he's flying jumbo jets. And then we find out at the end of it, he's actually now a commercial pilot where he is flying things across the ocean. Like he'll go and like planes that are not being used in foreign locations, they get pilots to fly them back to the location they need it at. And he does this. And he's like flying over the Atlantic. He's like flying for 18 hours at a time with a co-pilot. And you're like, are you kidding me? And he didn't tip his hat at all. You didn't know at the beginning of the season that this would end this way at all. There was no press. There was no, like, nobody. I think one TikToker found his pilot's license by accident, I saw. But other than that, there was no leaks on this. And to me, it was just this gigantic feat. And the feat was he actually used his real life to do this. He learned to fly a plane, and then he flew a plane with all of these real life passengers that were actors, but he was flying this plane that could go dastardly wrong at any time. But also then his whole thesis was they only pick the best and they only allow the best and the brightest to have their pilot's license. So I must be the best and the brightest. I must be okay. Because he shows the whole questionnaire, like, do you suffer from headaches? Are you autistic? Are you all of these things? And pilots have to answer these things. And so it was proving his initial thesis about pilots communicating with each other, but then it was proving to himself that he is okay. That you don't, it was so weirdly bizarre and also kind of beautiful for the autistic community, saying like, we can do anything. We can literally do anything, and that life will put you in a box, and you do not need to be in that box. Anyways, I know this is not about that at all. I just wanted to say that. And then also, Everybody's Live with John Mulaney, they wrapped up their first season last night. And this show often does not work at all. It can be very messy, but messy in this really beautiful way where, to me, I feel like, John Mulaney seems like a pop culture lover. Like, he has great music guests. He has them doing interesting songs. But then his guests, he'll have like 3 or 4 out there at a time. They have one subject per episode. It's usually pretty messy, a little awkward. I do not like the mics on the audience in terms of the audience laughter. It seems like a little discombobulated, just the sound. But last night they had their finale, and it was about teens. And at the very end, he fought 3 14-year-olds, and there was no hitting to the face. They're just like wrestling, but it was him against 3 boys. And I just thought, what a weird out of the pocket idea. That was kind of this, sometimes I appreciate television when you have huge corporations, they get fooled into giving money for these kind of insane projects like The Rehearsal with Nathan or John Mulaney. I'm just like, I love that kind of experimentation because I think for a younger audience, it teaches you that, once again, you do not have to put things in boxes. People can find different things funny. You do have a voice and you have to fight for that voice, and not everybody's going to like what you do. And by the way, I do a weird show. Like, I'm an old dude talking about reality shows and pop culture. Like, this is not normal, but but we persist, right? But we rise, still we rise. But I loved the attempt. Oftentimes I didn't think it worked, but I really loved watching the attempt. So those were 3 things, the Pee-wee, the rehearsal, and Nathan For You, that I thought were really interesting. And I love being alive in a time where we have all of these different things, is that you can dip into that, into reality shows, into, teen comedies or teen dramas, into classic movies. We all have it at our fingertips. It's everywhere. Search these things out because it's so hard to find things these days. But I don't know. It felt like a warm hug of pop culture with these shows. Okay. Let's do it, folks. Let's get into Bummer House. No, it's Summer House. So this is Season 9, Episode 16, Reunion Part 1, uncensored on Peacock, which means we get to hear the curse words. And I will say, this is funny. This is the cable company's description. As the Summer House reunion kicks off, West and Ciara unpack their complicated dynamic. How complicated can it be? But actually, it provided some good stuff. Folks, listen, I just did that first part 8 or 9 hours ago. And in that time, I went and hosted the red carpet at this, the Golden Trailer Awards. It was the 25th anniversary. And I was asked to host the red carpet by a listener, Allison Melody. Thank you so much. If you're listening, she's probably still out there partying, but it was so fun. I got to host the red carpet for like 2 hours. And it was just, you got to talk to a bunch of creatives and celebrities, and I had to think on my feet. Still sweat. I mean, the sweat was more minimal than usual. I think you guys would be proud of me. And it was really, really cool. The only thing that sucked is this stupid health journey that I'm on. They had like an open bar, and they had all these food trucks outside, like tacos and barbecues, like all this stuff. And I didn't have any of it. Stupid health journey. Anyways, it's 11:30 here at night, so I'm gonna finally start the Summer House recap. Oh, one more thing I wanted to show you. I was talking about that Pee-wee documentary. This is something that I kind of hate about myself. You guys know I like to collect. I like to collect, and I've gotten really a lot better at it the last couple of years. But I watched that Pee-wee Herman documentary, and I caved in. And I got something that I've wanted since Pee-wee's Playhouse was airing on television, like decades and decades ago. And I found it on eBay after the documentary for $70. And yeah, I could buy clothes, but I'm not a fashionista, and I'm trying to drop some LBs. So why invest in clothes right now? So what I did, I invested in a talking Pee-wee Herman doll, and it has this string on the back.
Hello, I'm Pee-wee Herman. I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah, look at this. Got myself a little gift. I think Rebecca's upset at me that I got that, but whatever. Okay, let's get into this recap finally. Oh, he always goes on so long before he gets to the recap. Okay, we're getting to it right now. We have everybody entering the reunion. Jesse seems like he's a little nervous talking with the boys backstage. And then we find out the Summer House Season 9 reunion set is made to look like a gigantic bed. Can we crawl up Paige DeSorbo's ass anymore? My God, we should have just shot the reunion at Paige DeSorbo's apartment. Are you kidding me? You're giving her this kind of power? Just ask her to stay for another season. Have you tried that? My God. No, it's actually very cute. And I will say, also, this week, I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and I did listen to Paige DeSorbo and Hannah Berner's book, How to Giggle. And I thought it was good. It was cute. I mean, it was not, for what that kind of book is, I thought it was good and well done. And they were likable and it was cute. It was funny. Yeah. I mean, and it's a quick listen. Like I listened at 2 times the speed. So it was like less than 2 hours. It was easy. And then I got to write another book down on my books I've read or books I've listened to this year list. But yeah, it was fine. If you're looking for an easy breezy read, How to Giggle was fine. And what I love about it, they kind of minimally talked about Summer House. And I guess that's I don't listen to their podcast, but they don't talk about Summer House, right? And I kind of love that. They minimally talk about it in terms of getting cast on the show, but there's no like, Carl's really like this. And I love that. Like they have a whole other thing, and I appreciate that. Like they're not heavily leaning on any of this. Anyways, Andy, to open us up as always, I'm Andy Cohen, and welcome to the Summer House Season 9 reunion. I'm coming to you from the place Kyle never seems to want to go, and Paige and Ciara never want to leave. We are in a giant bed as an homage to our epic Snooze Fest party. Great job, ladies. And also, the placement is Amanda Batula has the first chair right next to Andy. Paige is on the other side. And listen, I love Amanda, but I did not think Amanda would get that first chair. I think they do it a little different on Summer House compared to Housewives shows. So I think it's more easy breezy on Summer House. The one thing I will say is that Imrul is not brought out at first. And Imrul does come out on this episode and kind of tells a little bit of a, not fully tragic story, but a very sad story, which also shows you the realities of being on a reality television show. As fun as it is for West and Jesse, Imrul did not have that experience. The other thing that you notice throughout this hour is Gabby barely speaks. Like Gabby, I've talked about this all season. Like I feel like Gabby, I'm scared. I think she's on the bubble of not returning. Like, think about how many Summer House cast members we've gone through. I mean, Luke Gulbranson, obviously, but remember that guy, Alex, that all he did was just eat protein? Like, that was his whole arc for the season was, like, eating protein. Like, he had to get a lot of protein. And I'm worried. Like, Gabby did not speak. Maybe in the second part of the reunion, she speaks up a lot more. But I was curious of why not bring Imrul out at the beginning, and we still have no word about what the hell happened to Bailey. We have rumors that she actually had a boyfriend she didn't tell production with. There was another rumor that she went around telling production secrets. I don't really think that one would be true, but I don't know why this show in particular has a hard time with letting the audience know things. I don't think it needs to be this big of a secret. Like, I think they can actually explain why, or even why they edited Imrul out of that episode a couple of weeks ago. I don't think it ruins the magic to let us know of like, oh yeah, it was actually not a big thing. It was just that he wasn't involved in any conversations. So we wanted to edit him out. Like, I'm curious about things like that, or we're kind of winding down Imrul as a character on Summer House. So we wanted to get that in motion and really not show him at all. And like you, I think we all are grown up enough to realize that Imrul does more than just fucking, right? Like, but also he's a single dude. He be fucking, right? He be fucking. I hope you're listening with your families in the car right now. Let's all say it again one more time. He be fucking. And I would imagine if you're a single good looking dude with a timeshare or, house party share house in the Hamptons, you might be fucking, right? I hate to be so graphic, but that was Imrul's storyline. Of course he is so much more. But also, I didn't mind that was his storyline. I thought it was kind of funny. And the funny thing is, there was more of a glaring spotlight because Golden Boy Jesse went into that room and got his toe sucked. And I still think everybody's protecting Jesse. I do not think he just got his toe sucked. I don't care if Imrul went to bat for him and said, I have nothing to hide. I wouldn't lie. I think you would. But yeah, I think sometimes there might have been a slightly poor decision on Imrul's part to come in that hot and heavy in just terms of sexuality. Maybe he was also encouraged of like, this dude's like a Don Juan. That's why we like him. And maybe he leaned into it a little bit more than he should have. Just think about it in real life too. If you are in a share house with a bunch of people and you're new to that share house, you've been invited. First weekend, you're bringing home people back to back. I mean, that's a bold move. I mean, just in terms of relationships and getting to know people, that's pretty intense. Like, I remember we would have this Coachella house every year, and it was really cool. Like, it was the best time of the year. All my friends, we would get it, and I loved it because when we first started going to Coachella, we were broke as a joke, so we were all sharing like a small hotel room. And then my buddy started getting like TV jobs and stuff, and like they would get nice houses, and it was so cool. But I remember we would have like a couple add-on guests each year, and there was this one time this couple they were like a new couple, and they were like so into each other that they like skipped one whole day of the festival and they just hung back and boned all day and night. From what we heard, they were that. And by the way, they're married now with 2 kids. So like everything was great, but they were like that. And I was like, they don't even know it. Like, we don't even know them. They've been back just boning the whole day. We have no idea. Like, I had no idea who they were. And they were like, so it kind of sets it off on a weird foot. Does that make sense? I hope those people aren't listening. So Andy says, we have made your bed and now it's time to lie in it. Amanda, how does it feel to have gone from Kyle's girlfriend in season 1 to first position on the reunion? And Amanda says she's nervous and terrified, but it feels good and I really don't need Kyle. Why do we always have to sit next to each other? Yeah, Amanda, step into that light. Step into your power, right? Kyle says she's earned this. And Amanda's like, yeah. Kyle says it's about time. I like all the polite laughs when they get going because everybody's a little nervous. And he's like, hey, Ciara, how are you? And she's like, I'm good, Andy. How are you? And he asks, is this placement on the chair? She's seated next to Carl. Is this placement for your burgeoning relationship with Carl? And Ciara's like, oh, yeah, soft launch, not anything official. And we see a cut of Jesse's face, that toothy face. And then everybody's like, oh, Carl loves the word soft. And then Lindsay's like, yeah, soft being the key word. Hi, Lindsay. Hey, Andy. By the way, Lindsay looks beautiful. They all look great. Lindsay has like this purple dress, and there's like a V-shaped, like that cuts around her boobs. But her makeup is so severe. Like, it looks cool, but it also looks like a Marvel villain. Like, it's just there's like some dark angling on the makeup that looks really intense. Andy says, congrats on motherhood. How is Gemma doing? And Lindsay says she's incredible. She'll be here at lunchtime. She'll probably get more camera time than Imrul. Kyle says he's excited. Andy says, wash your hands. And Andy goes, West, it's the man behind the granny scarf. And we flash back to the scarf he wore underneath his hat, which I wore in my quick interview with Wes Wilson. You can check out that video on our Instagram. How you doing, buddy? And Wes is like, I'm doing good, dude. Good, great, all right. Andy said, now after your last reunion, I just want to remind you that you can speak today. We cut back to last year where Wes was having trouble communicating. Like, I feel bad. Like, I don't want to fucking hurt someone. But jaw. And then West says, I looked in the mirror, and Kyle's like, he brought note cards. Yeah, I looked in the mirror and I had to talk with myself, and um, I have notes, and he pulls out some notes from his pocket, and he goes, it says like talk on it, and everybody laughs. Good joke from Wes Wilson. Hey, Lexi, how are you? Welcome to your first reunion. How did it feel watching your summer back on the show? And Lexi says, it didn't feel good. Jesse's looking down at his crotch, the brain that he actually thinks with. And he's like, we'll get into that in a minute. And by the way, Imrul's going to be joining us in a bit. But first, hey, Paige, congratulations on your first tour. You're a New York Times bestseller. This is great. Jesse goes, wow. He starts to clap. Wow. Fucking Eddie Haskell ass. And he goes, obviously, your breakup has been all over the news for months. But it was interesting to me, Andy says, because in talking to Craig, he did express several times how surprised he was by the breakup. But then watching the show, you seemed headed in that direction strongly during the summer. I guess I'm curious, how much of what you shared with us who watched the show did you share with him? And this is funny because right here at the end, you see a teaser for next week where she's like, where Andy goes, I've noticed you're not really saying Craig's name at all. And she's like, yeah, he'll never hear me say his name again. And I was like, oh my God, stone cold, busted, cold as ice. But right here in answering to Andy, she goes, I mean, Craig and I have had that conversation for a year. So she does say his name. Craig and I have had this conversation for a year. It's not like one day I just woke up and was like, oh, I think I'll be single today. We broke up last February for like a full weekend. And then we talked, got back together. And so it's not like it was smooth sailing. And then one day I was just like, see ya. We've had these conversations over and over and over. And Andy goes, so what surprised you the most about the reaction to the breakup? And Paige says, I tried everything in my power to not have a breakup where it was like team me or team him, but he wasn't going to let me go easy. I don't know what, but he wasn't going to let me go easy. So that was an interesting little line of dialogue. Also, I thought it was interesting saying that they had broken up for a weekend in February before they actually broke up around Thanksgiving, right? So Andy says, did you two discuss that at all before announcing it? Paige says, no, we didn't discuss how the breakup would go after. But I did tell him that I was going to put a statement out on my podcast when I realized he was on vacation being single. I was like, okay, well, I can't hide this anymore from people. And Andy says, what do you mean that he was on vacation being single? And Paige says, so right when Christmas happened, he then went on a vacation to Aspen. So he was out at bars. There were girls around. People had pictures. They were on the internet. And I was like, I'm not going to respond to that. I would rather be the one to say, we broke up. He's fine to be out right now and doing his thing. Woo! Craig being out. And by the way, they had broken up, so he can be out. But what her point is that he was the one, if you remember, that said, please don't tell anybody yet. Can we wait? Can we wait? And then kind of went radio silent a bit. And then all of a sudden, he's out with girls in Aspen. And she's like, wait, you told me I can't say anything. You told me I can't announce this at all. So she went ahead and announced it. And he says, something that really struck me was that you don't believe he ever bought an engagement ring. And she says, no. And he goes, really? And she goes, that ring does not exist. And we flash back to the finale where Paige is explaining to the girls saying, Craig said, I really wish you didn't do this before you saw the ring. And Amanda's like, zoinks! And Lindsay's like, what? In my head, Paige says, I was like, this is why we're breaking up. Because I don't know if you're lying right now. He's like, I've had it for a year. And I want to see this ring. 2 weeks after we broke up, it doesn't exist, Lindsay. We'll never see it. Back to the reunion. Amanda says, he bought a ring without asking your dad? And Andy says, did he ask your dad? Paige says, no. And remember how close Paige, probably weirdly close with her parents. I think, that's kind of how I am as well. But, it's one of those things that Craig probably would have asked if he had this. Now, listen, let's have a tough conversation. I like Craig. I do. I like Paige. I've grown to really like Paige. But I like Craig. But I think there are certain things that it's okay to admit, as an audience that has watched Southern Charm and Summer House, is that Craig is a fibber. He's not a bad person. He's a fibber. He does lie. And I will say this. I think Craig thought and probably was deeply in love with Paige, did not want that relationship to end. And he's grasping at straws. So yeah, he's going to throw out the big guns. Well, I wish you hadn't done that. I got a ring. I mean, think about everything. Like, they've trolled Craig on the show before about, they've shown video of all of his lies. Craig really should run for president one day. Like, he's very comfortable with this. I do not think it's malicious. I don't think he's trying to hurt people. I think it is an insecurity within himself. But also, it's not okay to lie, but it is. I do understand probably what he was doing in desperation, but it is weird. I put out a post about what Lindsay said, or what Paige says at the finale about not saying his name again. And it is interesting. The comments are wild, man. Like, people are either like I thought maybe it's like even 60% more people hating Paige. And I just like, wait, first off, yes, it sucks. It sucks that people, like, if we all like Craig, it sucks that the woman that he said he loved all of a sudden does not want to be in a relationship with him, even though now I think we've seen the wear and tear of that relationship. And it wasn't just something sudden. But isn't that what you do, is you let that person know? Isn't that the right way to handle it, as hurtful as it is? I mean, we coddle men. I being one of them. I have been coddled. And I think that in some ways is great for men. That's great. But I think Paige did the right thing. I mean, she's not supposed to be in that relationship forever if she's not feeling it, because Craig's already with a new girl right now. Give him the best chance at happiness that he can have. So I don't know. It's very interesting to watch the discourse around Paige and Craig. And it really is trying to be ultra negative about Paige. Believe me, I've been ultra negative about Paige back when it wasn't cool. Like, I used to really go after Paige. And in this, I kind of see her point. But also, it doesn't make Craig a bad person. Like, there can be things where nobody's a villain, right? Anyways, and he's like, well, when Craig was on Watch What Happens Live after the Southern Charm reunion, he told me that he returned the ring that day. And we flash back to that scene, March 27th, 2025. Austin and Shep are with him, and Craig's like, I just returned the ring this morning. I just don't need custody of it anymore, so I took it back to the guy. I took it back to Zales. We cut back to the reunion. Paige goes, how convenient. The day he's on Watch What Happens Live. Oh, what? Him and his new girlfriend went and returned my ring? I don't think so, Andy. That's insane. Paige, just the perfect line delivery. So we cut to commercial. We come back to the ring conversation. So we pick back up, and I will say, good on the camera people. They get reaction shots from everyone on the couch. Everybody's like, zoinks, 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 zoinks. And there's like a pause. I don't know if these pauses actually exist or they put them in editing just to make it more dramatic. And Lindsay says, he also said that you told him to buy a ring, Paige. And Paige says, I know him very well. I know his tells when he's lying. Which, by the way, Kyle steamrolls her because she never gets to tell us what his tells are. Let us know the tells of Craig. Kyle says, also, Carl knows. Like, way to throw Carl under the bus. Kyle's like, Carl knows when you return a ring, you basically lose 50% on the dollar. And Carl's like, yeah, you can't return it. And then Paige is like, also, a custom ring, no one's letting you return it a year later. I mean, this seems like, and I know, listen, this seems like an easy thing that could be cleared up, and you could really make Paige eat her words. But I'm sad to say that I do think Craig is fully lying about this ring. I do, unfortunately. I think he probably had some thoughts. I think he might have talked to maybe he talked to Kyle. What if Kyle Chan takes the fall for him? He's like, yeah, no, I accepted the ring back. It was me, Kyle Chan from Vanderpump Rules. Anyways, Andy says, by the way, side note, what did happen to your engagement ring with Lindsay, Carl? And Paige goes, Craig took it. Woo-hoo-hoo! Everybody cracks up. They're united over laughing at Craig. And then Amanda goes, Carl sold it to Craig. Everybody continues laughing at Craig. And he goes, Paige, we're going to get more into that relationship a little bit later. Paige is like, can't wait. But we have a lot to get into with the whole gang, so I want to dive right in. After having a lot to say about Ciara in the press, West arrived in the Hamptons with arms wide open, hoping they could get along as friends. Within 5 seconds, Ciara quite literally swatted those hopes away. Watch. And then they flashed back to the entrance where she just patted him on the chest and then hugged Jesse, and West telling Kyle, I tried to hug her. She slapped my arm away, man. And Kyle's like, no way, dude. And then Ciara at that dinner going, how embarrassing that you publish an article to reiterate the fact that you don't like me anymore. That's a bitch ass move. And then West talking to Ciara, I fucked up. I'm not ever trying to hurt you. Yeah, I'm sorry. Ciara's like, I guess I'm getting to know you again in a different light. I'm not cursing the day you were born. By the way, I'd like to be congratulated because I have not brought up West's meaty nipples for the rest of the season since those beginning episodes. But once again, we just flash back to his very voluptuous meaty nipples. The guy has got some meat on the nips, and that's not a bad thing. Anyway, Ciara says, I'm moving forward. Now we go back to the reunion. And he says, Wes, were you genuinely surprised by Ciara's greetings, or did you think things were going to be fine with her from the jump? I mean, obviously, I knew we weren't going to be like best friends. I thought maybe enough time had passed where it would be like a little more cordial. But I didn't realize the damage that article did. I know that I dug my own hole, like a horrible reunion. I mishandled a lot of things in our relationships. I didn't wear a rubber. I was probably afraid to like just say that we were in different places, which looking back would have been so much easier and so much more honest. And like I said, all this stupid fucking shit. This is what you get on Peacock. You get full curse words, stupid fucking shit. And then after, I will be honest, like I got a lot of fucking shit. That was really hard for me, and I tried so hard to be respectful and not say anything about our relationship at an intimate level. I didn't talk about your voluptuous boobs. I think I was just describing the breakup in general, and I was watching the season back. By the way, now Wes just keeps talking. Like, even Andy's looking down at the note cards, like, when's this guy going to finish? But he's like, I watched the season, and when I think I found better understanding why that was hurtful. I know why it hurt you, Ciara, and I really, really apologize. But yeah, looking back, everything that I've said has done the opposite what I wanted it to do. And that sucks. Silence. And then he continues. He goes, oh, and Paige, because Andy goes, Paige. He goes, and I know that obviously that like clearly hurt you, and that's not anything I want to do. I didn't think at that point in time you were and I were on a talking level. So looking back and then watching that episode clearly, and then Paige goes, maybe a little too much talking. Everybody laughs. And Wesley goes, oh, sorry. Sorry. And he's like, Ciara, do you agree with Jesse that swatting Wes' arm away when he tried to hug you was a little extra, or was it deserving? And Ciara's like, oh, coming from the man who said don't hug him, like that's extra, don't touch him. Lexi makes a face. Ciara's like, I could have done a lot worse. Me removing his hand from my orbit is not aggressive. Jesse, were you surprised that Wes wasn't able to find the words to explain himself when Ciara was questioning him at the first dinner? And Jesse's like, not only was he not able to find the words, he took like a 20-minute break and then came back and still nothing. And then we see never before seen footage from that dinner. I hate, like, this is where it attacks my OCD, where I'm like, oh, because I always want to watch every bit of everything. And then when you show me footage that I've never seen before, and then I just know that there's a half hour of just, like, I'm one of those people. I've said this before, then I've been proven wrong. What was it? Like some extended Vanderpump episode where I was like, oh, actually that did kind of suck. I know why they cut it down. But this, it's like sometimes with Summer House, since it is just vibes, like, yeah, just it's like my podcast. Just keep going. Just like, I just want to, I'm fine if you just have awkward conversation or even silence. Just show me the camera. Anyways, we have that scene where Ciara's like, you're a fucking loser anyways. And West gets up to leave the room for a second, and this is the unaired footage, And he walks off. And Jesse immediately goes, Paige, you look really pretty tonight. This fucking, all Jesse is just one giant gland. You look really pretty tonight, Paige. And then it keeps going, like this unaired footage. And then they're talking about Lexi and Jesse. Are you guys going to make out this weekend? Because it's like the first weekend. And this is like 10 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 10 minutes later. And then all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, Wes comes back down. He's like, what's up, guys? What's up? And then doesn't say anything. They thought he was going to come back and have things to say, and he just doesn't say anything. Kyle at the reunion says, we thought that was going to be the turning point. And like, he's got this. And Amanda's like, he still said nothing. And Lindsay's like, I almost shit my pants. And then we flash back to that dinner again. Remember, that was when Lindsay couldn't, she was like, it's so hard to shit when you're pregnant. Andy says, West, watching that back, do you wish you had said more to Ciara at the table? I think that combo was not going to be progressive at all. And I think, does he mean productive? Progressive at all? And that's why I think I was waiting until the morning to talk to her. And I don't think anyone is surprised that at the dinner, I didn't like bring hell back. Like, I didn't think that was going to go anywhere. And, you know, and Kyle's like, well, no, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you're not saying anything and not giving any sort of reaction made it worse. At least that's how it seemed. By the way, also Kyle, I mean, I want to give major props to Amanda. She seems like she's really happier than I've seen her on previous seasons of Summer House. But also, have you sensed like a slightly better understanding of explaining men's actions from Kyle? Like, there's been a couple points this season, that other point when he was talking to, was it Jesse, and kind of schooling him on how he was talking about Ciara that one episode, that I was like, damn, is Kyle finally learning? Anyways, Jesse's like, Wes has a lot to say. It's just when he's caught off guard, he doesn't know how to respond. And Ciara's like, how can you be caught off guard if you always have something to say in the media? How do you not have something to say at the table? And Wes is like, I was just talking about you, though. I said that our relationship ran its course, and from what I read. And Ciara's like, yeah, but if you can talk in the media, then you can talk face to face. And then it's more reaction shots. You know when the reaction shots start, then it's about to go to commercial. Zoinks, 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 and it's intense music. This is like well-tread like material. Ciara said this already, right? Andy says, Megan from Boston writes, Ciara, right after you read West for Filth at the dinner table, you're upstairs telling Paige you kind of want to make out with him again. And we flash back to that scene. And Ciara's like, to be fair, I did feel bad for chewing him out. I don't want to have to chew anyone out. I will do what needs to be done. But it is sad because being in that house, it's like you have so many memories. And last year was so different. And now I have to switch to a completely different mode, and I can't be, you know, a softer version of myself with him because I was still conflicted at that time. I like that it's very like almost like, this kind of concept of masking your true feelings to further protect yourself because you didn't feel you protected yourself good enough the first time. And I want to point out to Ciara, fucking start protecting yourself from Jesse right now. Andy says, Wes, how do you feel watching that moment back? About the makeout thing? Oh, that surprised me. Yeah, that episode. And then Amanda goes, it's kind of hot. Amanda, stop. Amanda, like, I love Amanda this season, but I think she gives potentially the worst advice. She wants the worst people to like, I mean, what? It's not kind of hot. It's kind of dumb. No, don't encourage dumbness. Wes says, I saw an entire different perspective of the whole thing. And he says, Paige, do you think there was any part of Ciara that maybe wanted to rekindle with West? Paige is like, I mean, in like a serious way of like dating, no. But like, yeah, when she saw him for the first time in a couple months, she's a human. Obviously, feelings come back when you first see that person, but I don't think she would ever actually have acted on that or actually have ever gotten back together with him. And also remember, Ciara was coming off that season of The Traitors, so she was like hopped up. And he says, Ciara, Maggie from Los Angeles said, you said the situation with West was harder to deal with because you were having drama with your family. What was going on? How are things now? And Sierra's like, well, yeah, towards the end of our relationship, my mom got married again. And we see a picture of her and her mom. And she said that kind of set me in a tailspin and affected me a lot more than I thought it would. And she starts tearing up almost. And she says she's been married a couple of times. And honestly, I just like don't have the capacity to like get to know someone else. And I like these little pieces of information you get from them. Like, I didn't know that Sierra's mom, or had forgotten Sierra's mom, had been married multiple times. And I thought that was a very true feeling of, yeah, I just don't have the capacity to do this again, right? Like, it's hard on somebody, you know, like your mom and dad, and then your mom remarries and having to open your heart to a new person. Ciara says, I don't speak to my dad. And like me and Wes did have a friendship. And so we would talk about like family dynamics and stuff like that. And he was so totally like in his own world and one foot in the door and one foot out the door, where like he wasn't there for me, you know, which, by the way, I wonder if there was any similarities between Wes and her dad. And there's a big pause from Ciara. And Wes goes, when that time came, like Christmas time, you turned your phone off for like 2 weeks. And that was at a time that was important to both of us. And you were gone. And Ciara's like, yeah, I went to like Costa Rica. I went to a retreat. And like, honestly, I try to forget the holidays sometimes because it's really hard. She starts tearing up again, pauses again. And she says, you know, like not being close to my dad. And like my mom has this new family. And I'm feeling like very lost and in between. So I went to Costa Rica and honestly shut off my phone because, one, I just wanted to forget it was Christmas. I wanted to forget it was my birthday. And I did, like, around that time, I was like trying to communicate it a little bit, but I also didn't want to feel like a burden on him or make Wes feel like he had an obligation to, you know, invite me anywhere or whatever. And I think that he took that as like me trying to shut him out, when in reality, I was spiraling, just trying to like get through the month of December. And then I felt like he wasn't even trying to be there for me. And it was just missing each other. And Andy says, how are things now with your family? And Sarah's like, still rocky. I don't still speak to my dad, and me and my mom are better, but like, we still haven't really talked about the crux of anything. And I'm also like really hard on my mom, and I want her to like, I feel like she deserves like such a great love. And sometimes I feel like she just accepts like subpar. And so Kyle starts tearing up right here because Ciara's tearing up, but Kyle's tearing up. Also, man, I hope the mom is not watching with her new husband, you know, like accepts a subpar relationship. Like, what did I just hear? Are you kidding me? But it is this very sad thing because you want the best for your parents. And at the same time, you don't want to parent your parents. I mean, it's a true minefield of fuck. So Ciara says, it's tough. And yeah, it's a work in progress, just like Jax Taylor. And he says, I'm curious how like watching her romantic progression has affected yours. And Ciara's like, yeah, I mean, that's why I'm definitely very cautious and I don't move fast. And Andy says, has it made you more guarded about men? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Jesse's smiling like, and Ciara goes, all I wanted was for my parents to be married and get along, and like everything is almost like unraveled. And so I'm trying to figure out like going forward when I'm dating, what do I want my future family to look like? And the qualities of a man, like what's important to me? Like what have I missed out on and that I could provide to my future kid? I'm super cautious because I don't want to duplicate the things that I've been through. That's real shit. Wes goes, the way you talk about the love you want and the person you want and how well you see your future, like I just wasn't there. And there's like some real intense bongo music playing. Wes goes, I've had a lot of other relationships that I've let fizzle out in a lot of shitty ways. And I did think that us ending in that moment was the respectful thing to do. And I know that obviously clearly hurt you. And that's not anything that I would ever want to do. I thought it was at least would salvage maybe a friendship. Obviously, I fucked that up as well. Now, listen, maybe I'm getting got here, but I almost believe West in this moment. I almost believe in him talking about like letting other relationships fizzle out in a shitty way. Like, I feel like there's some sort of accountability after the fact, but like a recognition of this is what happens when you behave that way. Like, I think there's some hope for West. Maybe it's just the scarf. I don't know. West Dog. West says he hopes that they can one day be friends and that he also misses their relationship, and also says it's like the closest relationship he's ever had, which I thought was like a little dark. I was like, wow, they didn't have like intense high school girlfriends, any of these guys. Jesse's the same way as well, which I think that needs to be studied. And then they cut to break and everybody's kind of like, oh, good job, Ciara. And, proud of you. And Lexi goes, you're really brave for sharing all that. Lexi reaches out to Ciara on the couch. They come back from break and Wes like steps over the like set and messes it up. And Kyle's like, somebody sewed that, man. And it wasn't sewing down south. Another Craig zinger. And Paige is like, hee. And now Emerald comes on. Emerald is on the end of the couch, and Andy's like, hey, Emerald. Hey, great to see you. You won't be needed next season. Emerald asks Jesse how the first part went. He's like, solid. Pretty civil. Nobody raised their voice. And, he's like, well, Lexi yelled at Jesse a little bit, but, and they're like, what, has the Lexi Jesse stuff fully happened yet? No, not yet. And Emerald's like, I probably won't be around to see it, but. So Jesse's like, I'm just patiently waiting to unpack. And Gabby's like, Christ, Jesse. Everybody settle in, please. Quiet. Roll camera. 5, 4, 3, 2. We are back with the season 9 Summer House reunion. This summer, we welcome 2 new housemates with 2 very different ideas of how to send it. While Lexi liked the sound of being immediately exclusive with Jesse, our other newbie liked the sound of his headboard banging against the wall. Let's welcome Emerald. Hey, Emerald, how you doing? So they even kind of throw Emerald out of the bus in the beginning. This guy loves to fuck. And he says, we got a lot of comments about how you were pigeonholed as the orgy beast. Did that bother you? Do you feel like you were pigeonholed? That was your only thing about you? And Emerald says, yeah, I definitely felt like I was pigeonholed a little bit, but I also led with the sex party. And we flash to his first scene where he talks about a whole sex swing, sex party, and that he slept with 2.5 people at the sex party. And everyone's like, yeah, you did. And he's like, it was a strong entrance. Emerald says, I didn't clarify that it's not something that I do often. It just happened to be timing wise. I went to one a week before. It's always timing, you guys, with sex parties. And he says, Wes, you gave Emerald the nickname Orgy Beast. Was it a term of endearment? And Wes is like, yeah, of course. Of course it was. Anything beast at the end is like cool. And Emerald's like, I don't feel like I'm an orgy beast. I think you got to do more than one to be an orgy beast. I'm like an orgy novice. Well, you've done more than one. You did the one at the sex party and you did the one with the toe suck thing. Like, isn't anything, or is it, wait, okay, let's ask a question. I don't know. I've never had a threesome. I've barely had a twosome, definitely had a onesome. But like, is a threesome considered an orgy or is that just considered a threesome? Does an orgy have to be 4 or more? This is an honest question. I need everybody's honest reply. I've always thought a threesome was an orgy, but maybe now that I'm talking about it out loud, which I shouldn't be doing, a threesome is probably just a threesome and an orgy is 4 or more. Great. I'm glad we cleared this up. Emerald says, the nickname stuck. And he says, were you at all concerned that hooking up with women on your first weekend in the house would affect your ability to get to know the other housemates? And Emerald says, in hindsight, yes. When it was happening, no. It seems like I was just bringing back girls every single night. I've done it a few times, but I think 4 times over the whole summer isn't crazy. And by the way, we only saw him roll when he was fucking and he was there and they just edited him out. So who knows? Maybe that's part of the reason why they edited that part out, because they wanted to make him look like an orgy beast. Lindsay says, can you tell us what your pickup lines are for those of us? And Emerald says, Carl has seen me the most going out there. And Carl's like, he's a cool customer. His game is like the opposite of what I probably do. And everybody laughs. And then he says his results are the opposite too. And he even slamming Carl. And Emerald says, I think one of the biggest issues is we don't see us, out in the clubs. By the way, could I argue for that next season? I'm sure it's just too complicated sound-wise, but I would love to see their moves at a club. Like, we see a little bit of the dancing, but I want to see the lines that are thrown down, right? And Wes is like, Orgy Beast gives off a scent. It's a pheromone. It's a cologne. Emerald by Calvin Klein. Emerald says, on every one of those occasions, I'm just being a good host. I'm just being a good neighbor. My penis is just being a good host. And Lindsay's like, Jake from State Farm over here. No, I'm just being friendly, honestly. And he says, so I'm curious, has your family seen the show? And he goes, yeah, my mom and my dad are back in Bangladesh for the most part and don't really see it. But I just had this happen recently. My brother had a birthday for my only nephew. And I was supposed to go to that. And my sister-in-law's sister-in-law family, they're religious. And they saw the show and they're like, do we want to invite Orgy Beast to this birthday? And they made a whole stink about it. And my brother's like, I don't give a shit what you do. I know who you are. I know, but I don't think you should be coming to this birthday. So that was the first time. And it really hit home that I didn't do a good job in connecting with people, especially as someone who was there by himself, essentially, It was a little uncomfortable and it was a little nerve-wracking, and I kind of leaned into what I knew, I suppose. And Lexi says, I also feel like we possibly could have asked more questions about like who you are more as a person, but I almost think that it was so much exposure to like a new girl every day that it was just kind of the conversation. But obviously there is more to you than just the Orgy Beast. Lexi says this. I think Lexi, as much shit as Lexi gets, and like I said, not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination, but she does seem to have a very decent point of view on things. They could have asked him more questions about like sexual positions, like things like that. Also, that shit about his family, that's dark. And then I also had this theory that I was thinking about is that, maybe he started to be edited out because this thing happened to him and he talked to production and said, hey, I don't know if I want to come. I don't think I'm going to come back next season. And maybe that was part of the reason why we started seeing him less and less. There's just a thought I had, right? We come back from break and now we are in the Jesse and Lexi section, and we see a whole clip package with the suck a toe and I'm hard. And then Lexi finding out like Jesse got his toes sucked. Andy with the first question. Jesse, after knowing Lexi for about 24 hours, you told the guys that you could see yourself falling in love. And everybody's kind of laughing. What made you so sure? Andy asks. And Jesse's like, I wasn't sure. And Andy's like, you saw love in your future. And he's like, yeah, I fell hard. I don't like people often. And I just got like really excited when I met Lexi. I thought this seems like someone who could be a fit. I also think that's bullshit. I think this dude likes a lot of people or acts like he likes a lot of people. Where are these women? We need these women to come forward. If you have been personally harmed, if you have been liked by Jesse Solomon, please email us at sobaditsgoodwithryanbailey@gmail.com. That's a very long email address. And he says, I was like this, Andy says, by the way, have you been in love before? And Jesse's like, I think my first girlfriend, yes, in high school, like he's about to say the girl I slept with. It was a young love, Andy, and it was short-lived, but that was it. And he says, have you been in love since? And he's no. And he goes, so that's kind of a big deal that you said I could see myself falling in love with this girl. It's just like, yeah, it felt like a big deal. Okay, round of applause for Jesse. Oh, God, you saw a hot girl. You thought you could be in love. Give me a flipping break. Like, it's almost like, Lexi, you should feel good. Like, get out of town. Andy says, Wes, have you ever seen Jesse this head over heels for someone immediately? And Wes is like, oh, yeah, Paige and Ciara. Everybody laughs. Jesse Catherine from Houston says, was it really Lexi you liked so much, or the potential to be a boyfriend to someone super hot? Bingo! And Jesse's like, I liked Lexi for Lexi. Her eyes, her smile. She's very nice and outgoing and flirty. Kind of sounded nice to have somebody that I was interested in. And that's an element for sure, but it doesn't take away how great I thought Lexi was. And Andy goes, well, when Jesse and Lexi were together, their new romance seemed unstoppable. But when Lexi dipped out for a weekend, Jesse dipped his toes, great writing, into flirty waters and another woman's mouth. That's right, we got to talk about Toegate, Andy says. Jesse, the weekend Lexi was out of the house. Emerald brought home 2 girls instead of the usual 1. Why go into his room that night, Jesse, knowing that 2 girls were in there? Were you... What was the hope, Andy says? I was just like inebriated and wanted to invade personal spaces. And I thought, yeah, I'll just go check out what's going on in Emerald's room. I shouldn't have gone in there. Obviously, it was a mistake. And he goes, well, so I guess the chances would be that you would go in and they're all fucking, right? Andy says, fucking, you guys. And Ciara's like, oh my God, Andy. And Andy goes, well, I mean, you know. And Jesse goes, 50-50 shot. And Andy's like, I mean, if my housemates, you know. And Emerald goes, he definitely didn't knock. Or maybe he said he definitely did knock. Amanda says, I think we knew that they were done, though. So wait, you guys were all just listening to them bone in a threesome? And Amanda's like, I think I heard them all come. Yeah. And then even Wes goes, did you come? And Lexi points out, you don't know how many times they go. And Jesse goes, the facts were they were done. They were just hanging out. And Emerald's like, he's like, I'm just going to barge in there. And he goes, not to pry, but when you walked in, there are 3 people naked on the bed. And Jesse goes, the girls were happy to see me. And this is where it's a weirdly distasteful, because like Ciara and Paige and Amanda, they just think this is the funniest shit ever. And if you look at the facts of that, this is somebody that was essentially cheating on their girlfriend, this girl that they actually share this summer house and this TV show with, right? And they all think this is the funniest flipping thing. Even Lindsay's cracking, everybody's cracking up. The only one that isn't is Lexi. And Andy goes, so it was a schmooze. And he's like, yeah, it was a schmooze. It was a 36-minute schmooze. And Andy goes, 37 minutes. Yeah, it was 37 minutes in there. And then Jesse goes, I saved a minute for the toe. We don't need your jokes. They're not fun. You're not as funny as you think you are. Andy says, was anyone wearing any clothes? And Emerald goes, everyone was naked except for Jesse. He took his socks off, obviously, but that was it. And Andy says, so they're naked on the bed, and then did you get on the bed with them? And by the way, we've seen this bedroom. It is the smallest bed. Guys, it is a small-ass bed. And Jesse goes, no, guys, I only have eyes for Lexi. I'm going to be on this side of the bed. There's not enough to even call sides of the bed. It's just bed. It's small bed. No sides. And he says, so as we heard many times, made you excited and I'm hard. And Jesse says, I was joking and I'm hard. I was joking. This guy really, I've said this all season, has no idea what a joke is. That was a joke. And Wes is like, yeah, Andy, I wasn't hard. And Amanda goes, yeah, that's what Jesse comments on people's Instagrams. And Andy says it was a joke. So everybody's like, yeah, it's a joke. And then Lexi says, yeah, Jesse can say anything. It's just a joke. That's what he says. And Gabby's like, it's fine. He's just, you know. Andy says, Amal from Sydney says, in my estimation, a toe suck should last no longer than 30 to 90 seconds. So by the way, I've never had my toe sucked, and I'm not looking for that. I'm not fishing, but 30 to 90, that sounds like a lot. I mean, you got to be, that's, if you're really into toe sucking or getting your toe sucked, I guess that's like the amount you're looking for. But to me, I mean, I could just pause for 90 seconds right now. We could all just experience this together. It's just I'm not going to do that because this is already, as always, running long. But like just at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm going fat 9, 10. Like that'd be a long toe suck. But it's like, what were you doing in that room with Emerald and his 2 new friends for the other 30 minutes? And Jesse's like, I think we were just talking politics. It was an election year. And Lexi goes, naked, just drunk, naked talking. And Emerald's like, yeah, I mean, Jesse walked in and like, what's going on in here? And obviously, you know what's going on, Emerald says. We're not playing backgammon. And Jesse goes, you don't just roll into a room and immediately start sucking toes. Jesse's like, yeah, you got to warm into the toe suck. And he's like, you know, there's chit chat. And Kyle keeps throwing in comments. Amanda's like, Kyle. And he says, I will say, everyone's laughing and we're having a good time, but I would like to point out that Lexi is not find this funny at all. And Lexi's like, no. And then everybody's like, oh, party pooper. Oh. Honestly, though, you guys, for real, Think about 37 minutes, 2 naked girls, a horny ass dude. We know this dude is horny as can be, even when he's sober, horny as can be. This dude is drunk. Truly, you're telling me and by the way, we have the audio, so production could really let us know, right? Right? But like, what is the conversation for 35 minutes that led up to the toe suck? Like, what is the conversation? And, if you are post-coitus immoral with these 2 girls, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I've never just hung out. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. Don't buy it at all. This guy is feeding us lies. Okay, so we come back from commercial. Everybody had intense reactions. And Lexi says, I just think it was sketchy that he completely lied to me about that. And Jesse's like, yeah, and I am sorry that I did that. And that was not the right thing to do. And that was a mistake. And I thought it was just like a funny joke. And Lexi's like, it's not funny. Once again, I thought it was a funny joke. And then he goes, Lexi, do you think they had sex, by the way? And Lexi goes, I would have thought he got a blowjob. And Emerald kind of like makes a eyebrow movement. And Emerald goes, Emerald says, I have no reason to protect him. It was just a toe suck. It was just a toe suck. Just a long 37 minutes, but it was just a toe suck. A long 37 minutes. And he says, well, Jesse might have broken bro code and toe code. You need to be arrested, Andy Cohen, because his flirty behavior with Ciara that weekend made his roommates wonder if he was making moves on his bestie's ex. And we flash back to those scenes of them all flirting, blah, blah, blah. And he says, so Jesse, you said you thought Ciara and you were just being friendly that weekend when Lexi was away, but watching it back, do you still feel that way? And he goes, no, watching it back, I do think I crossed the line a little bit and I didn't realize how it was coming off and being perceived. And I should have taken Lexi's feelings into account. At the time, there was no intention of doing anything with Ciara unless she let me. It was just like a typical flirty friendship. But yeah, watching it back I understood. And he says, Lexi, I'm assuming watching it back for you was rough. And she's like, yeah, for sure, because he was never like that with her in front of my face. Obviously, watching it back, I was like, holy shit. If I had saw that, I would have been like, guys, there was something that weekend. Like, everybody could have seen it. And Ciara's like, listen, I totally get your perspective on that. But like, to me, like our friendship, yeah, he was a little bit ×5 that weekend. But like, we've done worse, unfortunately. And Lexi kind of squints like, what? And he's like, what have you done worse? And then Ciara's like, we kissed last summer. And I was like, oh shit. Like at first, cause they like teased this and I was like, whoa. They made out. And it was just that like first season when West was there, it was like, do I have permission to kiss Ciara? And they just give a little peck. It was nothing. I was like, thought something else happened. I almost had a heart attack. And Lindsay says they got in a fight and then they made up with a peck on the lips. And Jessica goes, Amanda said kiss and make up. So that's what we saw. Wes Sarah from South Carolina said, how did it feel seeing Jesse flirt with Ciara so heavily and admit he would have gone for her if you hadn't called dibs? Were you upset? Were you betrayed? And Wes goes, for the record, I never fucking said that I called dibs. That's an original from Jesse. Good. Clear that shit up. And they're like, yeah, that's a rebranding. And Wes is like, I would never say that. And he says, Ciara, do you take Jesse's flirting seriously? Ciara's like, no. If I wanted to fuck Jesse, I would have did it before the summer to spite West. And Amanda says, and not tell any of us and really throw him off his game. But no. And West goes, you missed out. Ooh, girl, you missed out. She's amazing, dude. Ooh. But Ciara says, I don't want to, I don't believe you, Ciara. And he says, Jesse, does that hurt to hear that Ciara doesn't want to fuck you? And then Jesse goes, Ciara, right in front of Lexi. It is, and like Ciara's cracking up, and it's so inappropriate. It's so And Jesse's like, it doesn't hurt. She said way worse. And he's like, Lexi, watching it back, do you still think Jesse was the only one in the wrong? And Lexi goes, it sucked to watch back and see Paige and Amanda see them flirting and be like, oh my gosh, they should date, they should date, they should date. Paige says, I never said that. And Lexi goes, no, Amanda did. And we flash to Amanda talking to Craig about that. And Amanda's like, yeah, that was still unfair of me to do. And Lexi says it did hurt my feelings watching it back because I did think it was very clear that Jesse and I were dating. And Paige is like, I told you not to even date him. And Lexi goes, yeah, before I dated him. And Paige is like, but here's the other thing. I think if Jesse was flirting with Ciara in front of you, it would have been a totally different story, but he was doing it behind your back. And we said, do not date this man, which also, but at the same time, like, do not date this man. But it's always on the woman. Like, why couldn't you like fucking talk to your boy Jesse that you're also good of friends with? Like, stop doing what you're fucking doing or I'm going to tell Lexi. Like, I don't understand. Like, you have no problem saying, well, I warned Lexi. No, warn Jesse. Like, if you're this good of friends, warn your boy Jesse to stop pulling that shit. And he says, so regarding Jesse telling Ciara not to touch him at the cancer benefits, we show that scene again. Ciara, don't touch my arm. And he says, did it feel any differently when you saw it play back on TV? Or was it exactly how you remember it? And Ciara's like, no, it was exactly how I remember it. Just super awkward. And when Jesse said he was joking, do you feel that he was joking? Or do you feel that he was nervous? And Ciara goes, no, it's like you probably needed to have a conversation with me about our relationship because it was making Lexi uncomfortable, but you chose to do it in a joking manner. Don't sell it to me as a joke when it's serious. And it's not like I was touching him and Lexi's out of the room. I touched his arm and Lexi was in the same room. So Lexi goes, I never said don't touch her, don't do any of this. He tried to pit the girls against each other. And I just think that you did so many weird things to make it seem like, and Ciara goes, to be fair, we didn't know that he was pitting people against anybody during it. But I will say on your see, this is where Ciara weirdly pivots to like, but I will say, Lexi, on your press tour, you definitely made it apparent that you were coming for people, especially me. And Lexi goes, no, I was coming for him. And Ciara's like, no, on your press tour, you actually came for me. And we flash to page 6's virtual reality, Evan and Danny. And they're like, well, on your press tour, Jesse and Ciara like posting photos together that look very flirty and commenting on each other's social posts. It kind of feels like they're trying to rub it in your face. And Lexi's like, I am not necessarily surprised because I had a birthday party and I invited everyone and certain 2 people didn't answer and certain 2 people hung out that day instead. And then Evan says, they better be prepared for you at the reunion. I love these guys. They've been on the show many times. I've been on their show. I love them. But this is what, they have like the Page 6 brand and it is such a strong brand and they're both amazing. And Danny's funny as hell. Evan, amazing writer on top of this, but it just they can get the best interviews because it's Page 6. Like, oh, I just want one of these, man. Oh, whoa. Ciara says, Lexi, you are also creating this narrative of like, oh, me and Jesse are actually more whatever, like the things that we're doing are weird and manipulative, like us hanging out together on your birthday weekend. And Lexi goes, he posted it on his story. And Jesse's like, no, we had a brunch, but it was on your birthday. It was not on purpose. This is like my also theory about this. I think Ciara had no idea that it was Lexi's birthday and didn't really care and, whatever about Lexi. But I think Jesse definitely did. And I think he put it on there because he knew she would see it. I truly believe this. He will never admit it, but I truly believe it. And Lexi's like, yeah, my birthday invitation. And Jesse's like, yeah, I wasn't like, Ciara, it's Lexi's birthday. Let's go to brunch. And so Lexi's getting out her phone saying he posted on his story on September 22nd, this. And we see the photo of the breakfast. And Lexi's like, I thought he was on a date and just didn't want to come to my birthday, so I didn't care. But honestly, and Jesse's like, you told me you didn't want to be friends with me. I wasn't going to show up at your birthday. And Lexi goes, exactly. And to be fair, I didn't want to make a whole new group chat without you. The birthday wasn't really for you. But I'm sorry it wasn't. I did genuinely invite you, Ciara. Ciara's like, yeah, but I think what you said in the media, like you illustrated this picture as if we skipped your birthday intentionally when one, I don't really know when your birthday is. And Lexi's like, I sent it. And 2, Ciara says, the last dinner that we had, you're telling me that you don't trust me. And Lexi says, no, I said he made me not trust you. And Ciara's like, but you're telling me that you don't trust me, so why would I go to your birthday party? Especially when you're illustrating the picture that like me and Jesse are doing things that are manipulative or doing things in the media to rub it in your face. And Lexi goes, no, I think he was. And Ciara's like, what the fuck was that? And Lexi makes a face like, I think Lexi chose her words poorly in that finale episode of like, I don't trust you. It's like, no, it's more of the things that he has said, you know, I feel for my current boyfriend, Jesse, and that it makes me not trust you because of things that he is telling me that make you seem not trustworthy. I think it was just poor choice of words. But I do think Jesse posted that picture on purpose. I 100% do. So that is the end of part 1. And next week on part 2 of the Summer House reunion, and we have Andy saying, Lindsay, how is your baby daddy Turner? And Lindsay's like, and everybody's like, really? So this is setting us up to make like they broke up, but I don't think they did. I think it's just a deceiving. Andy says, Carl, you confessed that the hardest part was missing Lindsay's friendship. And Carl's like, I didn't think I'd get emotional. And then Kyle talking about Amanda saying our relationship was on shaky ground. And Amanda says, I had 1 foot out the door. And everybody's like, zoinks. And then Paige with a comment saying, that's when I said enough is enough. And Andy says, are you purposely not saying his name? And Paige goes, absolutely. He'll never hear me say his name again. Which, by the way, we also have to, like, that was a badass moment. But also it could be a deceiving edit where maybe right after that Paige says, I'm joking, Craig. No, it just, you know what I'm saying? We don't know, but it is very cold and brutal, but also I understand it. Okay, so that was part 1. What did you guys think? I thought this might be more entertaining than the actual reunion, but overall I liked it. I'm one of the minority that just enjoys Summer House regardless of how bad or good it is. Anyways, have a great weekend, folks. On the Patreon tomorrow, I'll be doing the Valley After Show recap. It's 36 minutes of glory. I'll probably make it an hour and a half. And if you like the show, consider leaving it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, what up? And I think that's it. Have a great weekend, folks. Bye.